Welcome to Texas Football. Merry Christmas, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel of On Texas Football. It's weekly time for State of the Program, brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. Guys, I tell you what, we thought about what we might talk about today, and what we thought we would do is kind of grade position by position what Texas has done so far this year. Obviously, every unit, in my opinion, has a passing grade of some sort. And the Longhorns are sitting here on the cusp of playing for a national championship. Potentially, they're in the final 8. But, have they played up to the standard that they wanted to prior to the year, et cetera? Some positions have been decimated by injuries, like running back prior to the year, yet still had good seasons. What about the wide receivers? They've dealt with injuries lately, too. We need to talk about all of those. I'm going to start with quarterback, where Quinn Ewers, guys, has had a season that has been somewhat up and down. He's been ridiculed or critiqued, is a better word, I think. He's had great games like at Michigan early in the season where all of us went, I think all of our jaws dropped during that performance because, wow, what is the upside of this team? Then he kind of regressed to mean a little bit during the middle of the season after dealing with injury. And then here lately, starting to come on again. He had a really good game, I thought, against Clemson. Not perfect, but he moved around better, was throwing the ball better, kept the ball out of harm's way more. I'm interested to hear what y'all have to say for the body of work from Quinn Ewers this season. CJ, I'll start with you, buddy.
I think it's about a B, maybe a B minus. Look, you wanted him to continue to take that step forward from a year ago because he took the step forward from year 1 to year 2. Year 2, in comparison to year 3, he's got about 15 attempts shy a year ago, but he's about 550 yards shy of his mark a year ago as well. So the yards, the attempts, the average distance of target, whatever you want to say, those are all down. Now, is that because of the lack of familiarity? Sure, but by week 9, 10, there's no more excuse for that, right? The turnovers are up. The touchdowns are up. So at first, it started out great because you're succeeding in the red zone. A lot of that, who you were playing perhaps, but also because you had a run game in the red zone. But when the run game disappeared and it fell on his shoulders, I still think that leap that you were expecting to see in year 3 in the same system and the same offensive line, everything around you, I think that there's still a little bit more to be desired. And that was, obviously evident in the SEC championship game. But overall, I think Quinn does put you in positions to score points. And I do think when you look at the interceptions specifically, a lot of them are tips. A lot of them are bobbled balls, whatever it is. It's been somewhat unfortunate for him in that regard as well. So I do think he's done the job of a quarterback, which is essentially to put your team in position to score points more than it's not. And that to me is warranting of a B grade for me.
All right. Hey, Gerry, I want to ask you this now, and my question is a little bit different to you, not just from a grade perspective, but for example, CJ said his yardage was down. True. I mean, that's a blatant fact, right? There's no way, two ways about it. But he also doesn't have Xavier Worthy, who's a first-round pick, and Adnell Mitchell, who's having a pretty good rookie year for the Colts. He doesn't have those level of receivers on this team right now. So what do you think of his grade overall?
Well, and Bond's been hurt a lot of since he came back from his injury. And Cedric Baxter hasn't played this year. There was Baxter and Brooks last year for him, and not Trey Weiser's had a great year, but I mean that's a difference in how Texas had the attack. I think a tough thing for me with Quinn is a tough thing for anybody with Quinn is whenever somebody before a season is being talked about as a high first round pick. Could you go 1-1? Are you going to go 1-5? Are you going to go 1-10? And then you have the game you do at Michigan early in the season. Then the comparisons, the expectations get ratcheted up. And mine may be too high as well. I go with B on that as well because the Michigan game showed you the A-plus Quinn. And that's kind of what I've graded everything off of, whether that's fair or not. I think that's as good as we've seen Quinn at Texas was the Michigan game. Because Michigan's a really good defense. So I give him a B. But I don't know if it's because injury. I don't know if it's because the receiver injury, or Isaiah Bond being out, which is a big play guy in this offense, whether it's in the perimeter game or whatever. He hit him on a downfield ball at Michigan. Whether it's Quinn's injury, did he lose some confidence through that injury a little bit? Whatever that may be, did he lose a little confidence against Oklahoma when he came back from injury? And that kind of carried over for a couple of games. But at the end of the day, I feel like B is my grade as far as his play goes. But as far as winning, I'm not sure Sark wouldn't grade him an A-.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to go with B+, and it is because of that. It is because of winning. I mean, look, he's 12. They've lost 2 games, both to Georgia, right? Ark started 2 games and finished 1.
Yeah.
So Quinn is generally 10-2 on the season. That's a B+, A- grade for a Texas quarterback. Any way you slice it, if you're a bottom line guy, right? Yeah. And, look, B+ with an opportunity to still go higher, by the way.
Yeah.
In these last 2 games. I think that's totally fair. I do think this. He has been the victim of outsized expectations, to your point, Gerry, and over critique. Fair or not, it comes with the fishbowl that is the University of Texas at times. And I will also add this. He's handled it personally, at least externally, extremely well. Yep. You haven't heard him belly aching or talking to the media. I mean, he's handled it the way you want someone to handle it in an outward way. All right, running backs. This is the place where, man, going into this season, I didn't know what Texas was going to do. Not only do you lose Cedric Baxter, you lose Christian Clark, who's another guy that might be able to mix it up in the middle. You have to go into the season really with 2 lighter backs in Trey Weiser and Jaden Blue, and then a true freshman that can be a bigger back, but had some fumbling issues. You mix it all up, and Texas is leaned on the running game 3 of the last 4 games to high success. What do y'all think of this Texas running back group, and how would you grade them? Gerry, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, so it's a really tough one for me because the position they were maybe put in, you almost have to grade them individually. Position they were put in and what they've done with the Cedric Baxter injury. I mean, you're talking about a potential all-SEC guy on a college football playoff team, an all-SEC first team potential guy. So that's a tough spot because that changed the way Sark wanted to use Jaden Blue. I think we all know that by now. You didn't know if Trey Weiser was ready to take that big step. And then with Christian Clark going down, Jarrett Gibson had to handle the whole freshman load for this room. And that's tough. I give these guys a B+. And the reason I give them a B+ is because I think Trey Weiser has been an A+. And I think that carries the grade. And Jaden Blue went through his fumble issues, went through some time where Sark didn't put him on the field against Oklahoma and didn't play much against Georgia, but he's bounced back. And now he's bounced back with another favorable matchup game coming against Arizona State for him on the turf. The rest of these games are in favorable on domes, right? I mean, it's good spots for Jaden Blue on turf. And I go B+ as a whole because I think Trey Weiser so exceeded expectations that Texas headed into next year now has 2 number 1As for me if Cedric Baxter comes back off injury. And they had fumbling issues, though. I mean, they had turnover issues, not Wisner, but Blue and Gibson. And when you have 2 of your 3 backs that have issues fumbling the football, maybe my grade's too high. But I think there's so much adversity at that position. There was so much turbulence all year that I think they've actually performed pretty well considering all this happened. Oh, by the way, when you moved into the SEC. If this is the Big 12, I'm not sure these guys have – I think these guys' numbers are even better.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. CJ?
Yeah, not to mention that all happened about 2 weeks before opening kickoff, right? That's tough to – overcome, if you will. I kind of look at it in the sense that you have to grade the first half versus the second half of the season because Texas found its rhythm the second half of the season, right? The last 4 games of the year, whether it be Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M, into Georgia, SEC championship game, kind of throw that one away. But then you look at Clemson, you've totaled 240 rushing yards in 3 of the last 4 games that you've played. That's pretty good. That wasn't the case early in the year. And now will obviously bleed into the offensive line grading later on. But I look at it in the sense that you were probably a C, probably at the running back position at the first half of the year. You had drops. You had a lot of drops. One of those drops ended up as an interception. You had a lot of fumbles. Those are turnovers. You're giving the ball to the other team in short fields. It's not great. But then you see them find their rhythm. A lot of that because of Trey Wisner. And then you saw the reemergence of Jaden Blue in the second half. And I look at it as an A-. They're still really, really talented in that position in this second half of the year. There's still some moments that I think they'd like to have back, whether it be hitting a hole too quickly, maybe finding the wrong lane. We haven't seen a lot of them per se in the pass game. Maybe that's just because some of these screenplays have become monotonous and teams are expecting them more. But you can't disagree and can't look at the numbers over recently and say that they've been lackluster. And for that, I think holistically, it's probably a B for me.
No way I go into this season thinking Texas would have had another 1,000-yard rusher, though. And Trey Wisner's on the cusp of that right now. I would agree with CJ in that it's not necessarily an individual grade. I think it's a unit grade from the first half of the season compared to the second half. When they made the move to Wisner as running back A in the OU game in particular is where he picked it up, right? And established himself as the guy. Even he had a fumble in that game, though, right? Silas Bolin hopped on. I'm going to go a B- overall. And I thought they had problems in pass protection and fumbles. Pass protection, fumbles, they've since cleaned up. Pass protection, they've cleaned up. But going into the year, guys, part of what I think may have made Quinn a little gun shy in that middle term or middle point of the season wasn't just his injury. I mean, when you get throttled like they did against Georgia at home, where pressure's coming from everywhere, and some of that's on the running backs. I mean, look, it's not just running the football we're grading; it's the whole thing. So I'm a little bit lower, I think, overall on that regard. All right, the wide receivers, man. A year ago, this was maybe the best unit on the team with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell, as well as Jordan Whittington, all three in the NFL now. Somewhat disappointing this year, perhaps because of some issues with Quinn and being able to get the ball out longer and not having that power run to kind of play action over the top like they've had. But at the same time, they've been highly effective. They haven't dropped a ton of balls. Matthew Golden has emerged kind of as the guy for this group. Ryan Wingo has been brought along well, I think. He's playing 60-plus snaps a game now in replacement of Isaiah Bond. Then you have DeAndre Moore, who's kind of established himself. We've also seen a guy transfer out that we thought at the beginning of the year might be somebody in Jonte Cook. So where do we end up with this group, CJ, in your opinion, at wide receiver?
Yeah, a bit of a rocky road. I think that, you've had your good moments. You see the big plays for Ryan Wingo. He's not always been a constant in the game plan. However, you've seen some really impressive wins for DeAndre Moore out of the slot, and then you've seen some drops, right? Isaiah Bond, you've seen the good moments, and you've seen a stretch of games where he probably has, like to be a little bit more of the game plan. Matthew Golden's been the one true constant for me. And I don't know if I knew that was going to be the case coming in. I thought that he would be a steady third down kind of Jordan Whittington go-to guy in those situations. He's emerged as the guy in my eyes for Texas. And I don't think I truly anticipated that to be the case. It's been a little bit underwhelming because I did think Texas had a really talented, I don't want to say hodgepodge group, but a group of wide receivers that had a lot of different versatile skill sets that I thought they were really good in, right? You had your dirty work guys with Golden and Moore, and then you had the speedster and a big play guy in Wingo with who knows what Silas Bolden would do. I think to me it's probably been a C+, B-. And I don't want to be too hard, but there have been some timely drops specifically against Georgia. You had 3 more against Clemson, and some are tight ends. I'm not going to completely put that on the wide receivers, but I'd like to see more of the big play. Wide receiver's tough. Running game, blocks on the outside, blocks on the screens can always be better. I like C+, B-.
Gerry, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm going to go. Here's my caveat. Isaiah Bond was going to have a 1,000-yard season if he didn't get hurt. He was absolutely headed there. After about 5.5 games, first 5 games, he was averaging, 70-plus yards a game at that point when he got hurt. He was headed to a 1,000-yard season. So It's hard, and he takes away that speed element of it. So I'm going to go solid B for this group because there's been injury with this group. There's been QB injury. So some of the timing's been thrown off there. But I go solid B. I mean, you're still talking about 2,500 yards from the receiver core to this point, and I think 24 touchdowns. So they've still delivered. Matthew Golden, I think, has been tremendous. I think Ryan Wingo's hit a little bit of a freshman wall late in the last couple of games of the season, but it wouldn't shock me if he didn't have a big game against Arizona State and some favorable matchup there. But I'm going to go solid B because I think this Isaiah Bond injury, we may all, and maybe as a fan base, underrate it if you look at how important he was when he got hurt.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a B. I think they've been good, not unbelievable. So a solid output. I do want more. And I think you're right. Ryan Wingo may have hit a freshman wall. I'm not so sure he didn't knock through that a little bit last week against Clemson because they went to him in some key situations and he kind of came through. He drew PIs. Now, granted, and that was against a cornerback that was one of the ACC's best too, by the way. So I think he's going to get more opportunities as the season goes on here, particularly against Arizona State. All right, the tight end, Gunnar Helm, Juan Davis, one of the two higher grades on the offense. I'm giving tight end Groom an A at this point. Gunnar Helm, most receptions, I believe, in a Longhorn history for a single season. Y'all's thoughts on Gunnar Helm, Juan Davis, and that tight end group? Gerry, you go first.
Yeah, a solid A for me, too. I mean, Juan Davis is a revelation blocking. It's allowed Sark to, I think, get away from the jumbo package and be more of a complete offense, I think, in the passing game. Even though Juan Davis hasn't put up big reception numbers, he's added that dimension. 730 total yards receiving by the Texas tight ends. I know Gunnar Helm has 688 of that, but that's a huge number for Texas in the SEC now. If Sark averages 700 yards receiving out of his tight ends the next few years, Texas is going to be in the playoffs every year. So I give that group an A. And Helm, I think, look, one of the tough things in the Texas scheme is you're put in some tough one-on-one blocking situations. Sark puts a lot of trust on those guys on the edge against future first, second, third round guys. And so you're going to lose some of those battles, and I think they're magnified. But I go A overall.
What about you, CJ?
Yeah, it's an A for me. Look, Gunnar Helm, the way that he's taken over this position, he's been the best Texas tight end since David Thomas. You know, I don't really hesitate in saying that when you measure in his impact in the blocking game, right? You know, he's a complete tight end. He's not a one-trick pony, and I think that that's something that Texas is reaping the rewards of in its offense. He's been tremendous, and look, Gerry mentioned 680 receiving yards. I don't think anybody expected that. I don't think anybody expected the after the catch ability, right? The hurdles get the highlights, but the little 4 or 5 extra yards after a catch, that means a lot there. It's a very solid A for me.
It does well in the screen game too, guys. Hiding it, playing that little cat and mouse game that he does, and then actually being able to run after the catch. I agree with you guys. I think A is an easy one. Offensive line, man, if you take the 2 Georgia games out of this, are we talking about an A plus? Is my first question. But the Georgia games with it, A minus. I think it's the strongest overall position group that has a lot of players on the roster. I'm hesitant here, but I'm going to go A for the offensive line. Granted, they, like the quarterback, can still change their grade somewhat based on what they do here down the stretch. What do y'all think about the offensive line that is just, I mean, frankly, sometimes they've been absolutely flat out dominating. Gerry, I'll let you start.
It's an A for me. Look, I mean, you're going to get beat sometimes in this league against really good players, but Texas is a top 10 offense in the country, and they're a number 3 seed in the college football playoff. And for me, and they've blocked through quarterback injury, wide receiver injury, running back injury. Late in the season, Trevor Goosby's come in and played left tackle, right tackle. It hasn't been a smooth offensive season injury-wise for the Texas offense. And whenever there's quarterback change and injuries around you, it can affect you. But look, I give this group an A. because I'm just going to put it to you this way. If the 2009 offensive line was at Texas that played for a national championship, would Texas still be playing football right now?
No chance. Yep. CJ, what do you think? Offensive line grade?
Yeah, the goal coming into the year was the Joe Moore Award. You were a finalist. You came up maybe a little shy of that, but you're a top 3 offensive line in the country by the voters in that committee. You got to be pleased with that, and to rotate 7 guys as we saw in the college football playoff and not miss much of a beat at all. You got to love the depth. So I was pretty pleased with it. Of course, Georgia's a tough matchup, but I thought protection the second game stood up. I thought maybe you had a little bit more success running the football in that second game. I know that they stuck with it a little bit longer at least. So those are going to be the games that you look at further for that end-of-year evaluation. Do you dominate? Do you have success against a Georgia or an Ohio State or an Oregon or a Penn State with teams that with really comparable defensive lines moving forward? That's where the final grade will come. But right now it's an A for me.
I think that's all fair. That gives 2 positions A's, 3s, and the B's at this point on offense. Overall grade for offense for you guys? A-, B+, B?
B+.
B+ for you. What about you, Gerry?
It's hard for me to not grade them an A- since they're top 10 offense in the country. I got to go A- as a total group because they're playing and where their rankings are. But they're not. They have played a little below the expectation, I think, coming into the season.
Too often.
Yeah.
They've done that too often, and they've started. I think the red zone issues that have reared their head in the second half of the season. I mean, they were headed for an A in this category, and I think to y'all's point, I could have gone anywhere in there. I think that I could be persuaded. All right, defense. The defensive line, and I'm going to include the tackles and the edges together here. The defense as a whole, if not the top-ranked defense in the country, one of the best handful, and this has to be a surprise because I expected the Texas defense to be a little bit better this year because I knew they'd have better edge play. I didn't expect them to just be flat out better. I mean, you lost a first-round pick and a second-round pick at defensive tackle, yet I still would rate this defensive front, particularly along the defensive line, better because they can get after the passer better. That's just the cold hard truth, and it is impacting the back end like nobody's business right now. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with an A for the Texas defensive line, and I didn't know that I would have done that. I would have projected them as a B- heading into this year, just to give you a full assessment. So the expectation level of this defensive line versus what they've produced, light years apart, in my opinion.
Maybe this isn't because they were the opposite of Quinn Ewers. They weren't projected to be the first pick of the draft all the way across the board.
Yeah,
right. So expectations are lower. I give them an A++. Okay. Alfred Collins, A+. Vernon, A+. Trey Moore turned out to be an A. Colin Simmons, freshman year, A+. Barron Sorrell played his role well. Jermaine Lole, a healthy Jermaine Lole, is an A+ player. Bill Norton has made a couple of A+ plays for you. Kenny Baker, A+ coaching them because he coaches
Ethan Burke.
Had
a sack on Saturday. I mean, he's like a wild card almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's an A++ group for me because Texas will not still be playing without these guys this year. Bottom line.
Couple of big stops in the red zone.
That's exactly where I was going. The big moments last year were from your interior defensive line. You don't go to the college football playoff if Kansas State's able to punch that four place stand in the red zone. And a lot of that was because of Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. You lose them, you're not expecting that same type of output. What were 2 of the biggest moments that Texas fans look at from their defense this year? Goal line stand against Clemson to seal the deal at home, and also the goal line stand against Texas A&M to seal the deal in College Station. It all starts up front with those interior guys. Gerry, Bobby, y'all mentioned the ability to get after the quarterback. The hands up in the passing lane, I think, is one of the more underrated aspects of this team as well. Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Barron Sorrell, these guys are all getting hands up, deflecting passes. Several of them have been intercepted. We saw one against Clemson. We've seen them against Vanderbilt. That means so much more than just going after and playing your role. in my eyes. It's impacting the game when you can't impact the game. I don't know if you did that as often a year ago. It's been an A+.
Linebacker losing Jalen Ford this year, but Anthony Hill steps into that role. Leonga Lafau, David Benda, Mo Blackwell. They've got a group now, even a young Ty Anthony Smith coming on and playing a little bit. What do y'all think about the linebacker core as a whole, not just Anthony Hill and his disruptive nature? CJ, I'll let you go first.
It's probably an A- for me. I think that's the case because when there is a big play, I think more times than not, it kind of spurs from that linebacking position, whether it be a wrong fit and over pursuit or just kind of getting lost in the middle of the field in coverage, right? Clemson was able to kind of start the game really hot in the middle of the field, and then you look back and see where they scored one of their final touchdowns. It was on a vacant area of the middle of the field. And I think there's just a little bit more of development needed in the passing game over the middle of the field. That's why you see Jahdae Barron move to the middle, right? I think, again, they've been really impressive. The impact plays, whether it be Leonga Lafau, whether it be Ty Anthony Smith coming up with a couple turnovers, and Anthony Hill, who was a Butkus Award snub. You got to be pleased with the overall output. It's an A- just in the sense that there's still plenty of room for them to improve. But my goodness, if Anthony Hill doesn't win that award next year, someone else is going to have a historic season.
Gerry, what do you think, man?
So it's like almost two different grades. It's one with what's been put in front of them, and it's one kind of I'm wondering after the Clemson game how much they've really been tested in pass coverage. I'm going to go B+. I think downhill football, they're in a solid A group. I don't know in pass coverage where they're really at, but I think we're going to find out in the college football playoff after Clemson where these guys are really at. So I give it a B+ overall because I do think there is in coverage is a drop off from how they are playing the run and playing downhill and being disruptors.
I'm just going to say it's a B+ period. I think Anthony Hill makes a lot of fantastic plays. I think he's still learning how to fill. Leonga Lafau is a natural nose for the football and understanding of where to be. But, you know, there's something about that unit that I want to see a little bit more out of before I give him an A. We'll see what it goes. And while I do think that Anthony Hill was snubbed for some national awards, I think he's still got room to grow too.
Yeah,
I think he's going to grow into. I don't think he's an A+ player right now. I think he's an A because of his disruptiveness, but he's not a refined linebacker at this time. He's still got growth ahead of him. I'll go B+ with you guys. The secondary, though,
throw one thing out real
quick.
I think it's going to be an A+ group next year, but we have all off season to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That is fair. That's what I was trying to go with. I think there's more to come there, right?
Ty
meat on the bone.
Brad Spence coming in, Elijah Barnes. They're setting this thing up at linebacker to be tremendous next year. It'll be fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. All right, the secondary. I dare you guys to say anything other than A+. I just give me a reason why it's not an A+. Anybody?
No, it's an A+. The only reason you could say is it going to end up an A is what's left in the playoffs.
Yeah, if Dylan Gabriel slices them up, or Will Howard, or somebody like that does something.
Do you have a Washington experience? Do you have a Washington experience against Dylan Gabriel, and that's how your season ends? But so far, A+.
Yeah, I mean, literally, Michael Taft, Andrew Makuba, Manny Muhammad, even though he's picked on a little bit against Clemson. Jahdae Barron wins the Thorpe.
Gavin Holmes the last 2 games. Gavin Holmes the last 2 games, guys.
Absolutely. That's where I was going as well. But even before then, right, you saw Kobe Black make some really impactful plays. Jelani McDonald stepping in and being a starter for 2 games. When Texas has had depth issues, whether it be because of a Derek Williams injury, a targeting suspension, or just Andrew Makuba not traveling, you've had several guys stand up, and that's been what's been really impressive. There's not been a drop-off, and look, Texas struggled with their front-end guys last year. This year, even when you toss in, Gavin Holmes, Kobe Black, some of the guys I just mentioned, there hasn't been. It's been an A+ for me all the way through. The interceptions have been tremendous. You got several guys fighting for what will soon be their 5th interception if they get to it with Andrew Makuba and Jahdae Barron. I believe he might already be at 5 after the SEC championship game. But that is just the communication I couldn't type the plus button enough if I tried when I talk about that communication, just how on board they are before every snap.
What about the defense as a whole, guys? Defense as a whole, an A, solid A at this point.
A+ for me.
A+.
Yeah,
I
think it's A+ based on who they've played, right? I don't think they've played great offensive teams. So what's been put in front of them? A+.
Okay, I could go with that.
Hey.
I want to get into special teams, but first I want to say thank you to our sponsor. Our sponsors, Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm. Each and every state of the program brought to you by Adam and his team at the LowyLawFirm.com with more than 20 years of experience of helping injured Texans. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, including an 18-wheeler or an ATV even, and want a free, no strings attached consultation, make sure you reach out to Adam and his crew at LowyLawFirm.com. Thank you, Adam, for your sponsorship of every week's state of the program. Special teams. Now, if there is a hole in this grade for this team, I think it exists here, guys. Bert Auburn missing too many kicks. Michael Kern not getting really hang time on his punts. Matthew Golden with some questionable decision-making, bringing things out. Silas Bolden with some questionable decision-making as a returner. The fourth down fake by Georgia. Is this a D for special teams? Because a D is in David, because that's where I'm leaning right now with this group of all. I mean, it's hilarious because we're talking about a top 5 team in the country.
Yeah.
Bobby, it's a D as in damn it from the Georgia game. Okay, let's be real. We can cuss a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it cost you the SEC championship. At the end of the day, 2 right hash kicks in a dome without wind in perfect conditions and a fake punt cost you the SEC championship in year 1. So it's a damn it. It's a D. Matthew Golden's been clearly frustrated because he's forcing returns right now. That's a frustrated player.
CJ, what did you have to say there on that?
You're -2 in the punt block game this year. I didn't think that would be the case when you have that level of speed and scheme with Jeff Banks, right? We've seen punt blocks all the way throughout his tenure here in Austin. And you look back a year ago, what was one of the biggest plays of the entire year was a punt block for a touchdown against Oklahoma. That hasn't necessarily shown up. And of course, you had a punt blocked against Texas A&M. Fortunately, you got an A+ defense. And you've had a punt blocked against, I believe, Mississippi State at home. Early in that game, it was frustrating. Texas allowed a poor opponent to stick around and benefit because of special teams, and that hasn't been the case under Jeff Banks and Steve Sarkisian. I do wonder what this unit will look like next year when it's older, because I do think they have a lot of young pieces that are in very important roles right now, whether it be gunners, whether it be at a kicker, whether it be at punter. You're very young there. I do look at special teams like an offensive line or defensive line. You'd like to have some experience there, and experience, obviously, not on the Longhorn side this year. So a D for me is probably fair.
I think that's all fair. I think that's all good. A- for offense, B+, A-, B+. Sounds like on offense, A on defense, and then a D on special teams to kind of sum all that up. All right, that'll do it. Happy or Merry Christmas to everyone. And hope you guys have a nice day. For Gerry Hamilton, CJ Vogel, and our producer, Matt Hutchison, you guys have a good one. Hook 'em. 7 days away from the Peach Bowl. Texas takes on Arizona State. Hook 'em.
Merry Christmas.